E3 2020 continues to get weirder and weirder, and more I'm just wondering if the show is a thing of the past entirely. Should we even be excited for E3? Do I recommend any of you try to go to this year's big, quote-unquote, big show? Well, today's new information is definitely concerning. What's going on, everybody? It's GhostRobo. If E3 isn't losing Sony, if they aren't leaking data, then they're losing one of the biggest figureheads in gaming, the guy who has touted and tentpoled E3 and the Game Awards for years. Geoff Keighley ain't going to E3 this year, my friends, and that is a huge sign of how far the show has fallen. Now, I want to start off with a little bit of the Exhibitors List. We know that E3 is going to be weird this year. It's a sign of the times. It's a sign of how distribution of information, connecting with fan bases, and how we find out about new games and consoles is dramatically changing. And in 2020, start of a new decade, more than ever before. Sony is not even going to be at E3 when they have a brand new console. Previously, that would have been a crazy, off-the-wall, insane thing to hear about or predict to happen, and it is happening. They normally would have used the massive stage of E3 to share their console and plans with the masses, and now they're going to go their own route with their own event that we all hope is soon, but they're not going to be at E3. Xbox is sort of at E3, but it's really their own event that just happens to take place at the same time as E3. And there was a scare this morning that Nintendo would also be sitting out E3 because a list of big exhibitors appeared on the E3 website. I think it was actually not supposed to appear, but it did. We've got Activision, Amazon Game Studios, Bandai Namco, Bethesda, Capcom, Epic Games, Calypso, NCSoft, RDS, Sega, Square Enix, Take-Two, Tencent, THQ, Nordic, Ubisoft, Unnamed VR, Warner Brothers, and Xseed. You know who's missing here? Let's look between NCSoft and RDS. No Nintendo. So there was a big panic of like, oh my gosh, Nintendo hasn't put out a direct this year. They're not on the E3 exhibitor list. Maybe they're just canceling all plans and they're just going to do everything stealth mode from now on. But luckily, quickly proven that this is not the case. An article from The Hollywood Reporter on January 17th actually confirms that Nintendo will be there. It was discussing Sony's decision to not be a part of the 2020 program, and they reached out to Doug Bowser for comment, the big shot over at Nintendo, the big King Koopa himself, and he said that, hey, they are going to be there. We look forward to participating in E3 2020. It is one of many ideal venues for us this year to interact with people in a social and immersive environment. Every year we base our approach to E3 on the content we have to share, so clearly they're bringing content to E3. Crisis averted. At least Nintendo will be there, because otherwise that hall was going to be a hall that I don't know if I'd even go to. And then Geoff Keighley puts out this statement on Twitter saying, hey, even though I'm the big guy that does the Game Awards, everyone kind of associates me with the game information space, with sharing new news, with sort of being a figurehead, a face to put to these shows, and someone you think E3 would want to really aggressively court because it would maintain consistency. And they say, oh, they're going to try to make things more fan-centric, and they're going to bring star athletes and celebrities to play games on the show floor and bring Q-tainment where you're entertained as you wait in lines. And I don't know if it's all going to work out. It sounds a little corny to me, but Keighley clearly thinks it's too corny for him. He says, for the past 25 years, I have attended every electronic entertainment expo. Covering, hosting, and sharing E3 has always been a highlight of my year, not to mention a defining part of my career. I've debated what to say about E3 2020. While I want to support the developers who will showcase their work, I also need to be open and honest with you, the fans, about precisely what to expect from me. I've made the difficult decision to decline to produce E3 Coliseum. For the first time in 25 years, I will not be participating in E3. I look forward to supporting the industry in other ways and at other events in the future. Dagger in the heart of the ESA's big show. I think, obviously Sony not being there is a massive blow, but if you're going to have one person say, I don't really believe in E3 anymore, Geoff Keighley is the one dude you would not want saying that. He has such a presence on Twitter. I think he's such a fan favorite for what he's done for games and what he tries to do in terms of promoting, supporting, and championing and celebrating developers and sort of the uniting of gaming audiences. This is a massive year. It's a new console year. E3 should be huge. And Sony's not going. Geoff Keighley's not going. Technically, Microsoft's not going. Technically, EA is not going. The show is on life support. I'm super super scared, not curious, but scared to see what this year's show will hold. Now, should you go? Is it worth going? Am I going to go? I saw people asking, many people like Jeff Gerstmann of Giant Bomb, are you still planning to go this year? He said yes, unless something dramatically changes. And I think most people still will go to E3. It's still a big, bold show that still will have a lot of fun and a lot of exciting announcements. There are too many games, and it's a good problem to have, but there's too many games, meaning you can't just... One E3 isn't enough to soak in all of the delicious goodness that the show has to offer. So even if there isn't as much bombastic excitement and as many big, gigantic booths and as much all-encompassing gaming Christmas-like vibes at E3 2020, it'd still be a show full of games. If you look at last year's E3 and what was still showed off, what you still got to check out, what still was on the show floor, even though they have started to remove more and more titles from playability at E3 proper because of the introduction of public and the fear that they won't take kindly to a game that's still in an early alpha or beta state, even though many companies have removed themselves, even though many big booths have gotten smaller and not as crazy. I mean, one year they had a giant Goliath from Evolve. They've had massive displays for Mafia. We're talking 2K just because I think they recently have still had some of the biggest and most bombastic booths. But at one point, everyone did that. Everyone had something theme park worthy, and now it's just a lot more low-key. Ubisoft will still have a massive booth. Nintendo will still have a massive presence. I love the Nintendo booth. I think they go to the tens every year. They've done wonderful work, converting the booth for Breath of the Wild, delivering the different sections for the Pokemon Stadium this year, Luigi's Mansion. It's wonderful. Who knows what they'll have this time around. I still think the show is enjoyable. And if you've never been to any convention, if you haven't been to a PAX, if you haven't been to an E3, I think it's totally worth going. And if you haven't ever been to E3, here's what I'd say. If you've still been to PAX but haven't been to E3, it's worth going so you can check it off your list. Because honestly, this show may not last much longer. I'm sure that they will maintain E3 in some form for as long as they can. But it is clear as day, despite how much I want to believe otherwise, that this thing is falling apart. It is really, really just losing momentum as the months pass on. And I don't want that to happen. It's my favorite week of the year. I cherished this time since I was very small. I'd watch it on G4. I'd follow on the internet. I'd download every podcast possible. And then I finally got to go, and I've been going every year since, and I love it. Even if my favorite announcements aren't there, even if the show gets a little smaller and smaller, even if Sony sat out last summer, I still love being a part of it. So I'm going to go. I want to be a part of it, and it's still fun, and there's still cool behind closed doors, different presentations. There's still a lot to see and witness, and the week itself still holds a lot for press and media to cover because everyone is converging on LA, so there's a lot of opportunities to get people to see the game. And so for me, there's more than just the show floor. And there's still going to be tons of announcements, so even if you don't go, it's still a week to pay attention to, obviously. Microsoft is still going to have massive plans for Series X. A lot of third parties are still going to be showing off their big, bold next-gen games. It still will be an exciting time. It's just very weird to see it falling apart in this way. And I'm genuinely a bit confused because I understand wanting to have your control over your message, having your own stream, having your own reveal event, participating in some of the more public-facing, fan-centric conventions like PAX. And I understand the costs and money and time that it takes to prep and plan and run an E3 booth at the LA Convention Center is immense. But as a staple of the industry for decades now, as a showpiece moment to really say this is what gaming is all about. Here are the biggest, best games from the biggest, best companies in one spot for everyone to witness. I know they feel they don't need that. I know they feel they can speak to their audience. You don't have to get a USA Today article anymore. You just get the live stream, you get the tweets, you do as you please. Or you don't, in the case of Nintendo, who doesn't seem to want to do a Direct in 2020. But even with all of that being true, I still wish that, and I still would think you'd want to maintain this big touchstone event. And maybe it just speaks to where society is going in general, that this kind of stuff isn't as important, and we're just going so digital that that's what counts. But I am still bummed. I wish this was not the case, and I'm going to still go and soak as much fun, joy, and enthusiasm out of this show as I possibly can. There still is so much goodness. So while it does seem like doom and gloom, while it bums me out tremendously, while I'm shocked to see Keighley say sayonara, while I was scared Nintendo might have been sitting it out, I'm still very excited for the show, and I think you should be as well. By E3, we will know about the PlayStation 5. At E3, we'll learn plenty more about the games for both new platforms, and we'll get to see a lot from Nintendo and Ubisoft and other companies for current generation as well. It is going to be an awesome week. You'll learn about games that you'll be excited for straight up to the day of release, and then you may love for years and years beyond. So there's plenty of value and plenty of fun to be had. It's just not the same. It's not the spectacle that we're used to. And it's a weird, weird turn for a world that some days just totally confuses me. But hey, they're going to do their best to put on a show. It'll be interesting to see. And like I said, still a lot of fun to have if you want to go. And if you want to say you went to E3 before E3 was E2, E1, and maybe no more at all, then this is a year that you probably should really consider going. I'm a little worried about the germs, to be honest. A little germophobic over here, and I'm not the biggest fan of traveling and interacting in a space where there's 50, 60, 70,000 people and a whole lot of controller exchange. You're going to bring the hand sanitizer in massive quantities and boost my immune system, stay healthy, stay safe, but I'm still going. So thanks so much for watching. Let me know your take on E3 and how you feel about this in the comments down below. Have a fantastic day. I'm nervous that between now and June, we're going to be making another video about more withdrawals, but hey, at least they posted that list that shows Ubisoft, Nintendo, Square Enix, Take-Two, Sega, THQ, Warner Bros. They're going to be there. Capcom, Bethesda, big companies, awesome projects. Still my favorite week of the year. Until next time, everybody. Thanks again. Drink some hot chocolate. Love you a lot. Be good to yourself and others out there. And we will see you all alive.